Hi, and welcome to today's Daily Chronicle. Today is Thursday, February 12th, 2026. How the new dietary guidelines could impact school meals. Putting together a school meal isn't easy. It is a puzzle, essentially, said Lori Nelson of the Chef Ann Foundation, a nonprofit that promotes scratch cooking for schools. When you think about the guidelines, there's so many different pieces that you have to meet. You have to meet calorie minimums and maximums for the day and for the week. You have to meet vegetable subgroup categories. Districts that receive federal funding for school meals through, for example, the National School Lunch Program, must follow rules set by the Department of Agriculture, USDA, and those rules may be changing soon. In early January, the Department of Health and Human Services and the USDA unveiled new dietary guidelines for Americans, along with a new food pyramid. The USDA sets school nutrition standards based on the dietary guidelines, which now place an emphasis on protein and encourage Americans to consume full-fat dairy products and limit highly processed foods. Here's what to know about how the new food pyramid could impact schools. Cutting back on ready-to-eat school meals won't be easy. Highly processed and ready-to-eat foods often contain added sugars and salt. Think mac and cheese, pizza, french fries, and individually packaged peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. These foods are also a big part of many school meals, said Nelson. That's because schools often lack adequate kitchen infrastructure to prepare meals from scratch. Many schools were built 40 plus years ago, and they were built to reheat food, so they weren't built as commercial cooking kitchens, said Nelson. Even so, schools have been able to bring sodium and sugar levels down in recent years. They've been working with food companies to find a middle ground, to find recipes that meet the current standard and appeal to students that schools can serve given the equipment that they have, said Deanne Pratt-Heavner, a spokesperson for the School Nutrition Association. Bringing sugar and salt levels down further would likely require that food companies adapt their recipes and that schools prepare more meals from scratch, Pratt-Heavner said. But leaning into scratch cooking won't be easy. A recent survey of school nutrition directors by the School Nutrition Association found that most programs would need better equipment and infrastructure, as well as trained staff, and nearly all respondents said they would need more money. You cannot go from serving heavily processed heat and serve items to scratch cooking immediately, said Nelson. It's a transition. Protein-rich school meals will come at a higher cost. At the top of the new food pyramid are animal products such as meat and cheese. The new guidelines prioritize consuming protein as a part of every meal and incorporating healthy fats. That could cause a change in school breakfast standards, said Pratt-Heavner. Right now, there's no mandate that breakfast include a protein. A typical school breakfast today might include fruit, milk, and a cereal cup or muffin. Some schools may serve breakfast burritos or sandwiches. She said schools would absolutely need more funding, should they be required to provide protein under the USDA's school breakfast program. Current standards allow for schools to serve other grains or meat alternatives for breakfast. And Pratt-Heavner said, protein options are more expensive than grain options. She said it's unclear whether the USDA would require protein under its own category or whether the agency would consider milk to be sufficient to meet any new protein requirements. Whole milk is getting a lot of attention. Schools that participate in a federal school meal program are required to offer milk with every meal. Those students don't have to take it. Up until recently, an Obama-era rule allowed for only low-fat and non-fat milk in schools. But the new food pyramid emphasizes a whole-fat dairy, like whole milk, at the same time. Recent federal legislation reversed that Obama rule and now allows schools to serve reduced fat and full-fat milk. One more thing to know about milk. Federal law also limits saturated fats in school meals, and whole milk has more of those than low-fat and non-fat varieties. But the recent federal legislation now exempts milk fat from those limits. What does all this mean for schools? They're not able to start serving whole milk, and they won't have to worry about whole milk pushing them past the limits on saturated fats. It'll be a while before these changes trickle down to schools. While the USDA sets regulations for schools based on the dietary guidelines for Americans, it takes time to draft and implement new rules after new guidelines are released. The current school nutrition standards that we're operating under were proposed in February 2023. Finalized in April 2024, said Pratt-Hefner. The first menu changes in school cafeterias were not required until July 2025. Other changes are still rolling out, which is to say, the new dietary guidelines won't bring immediate changes to school cafeterias. They're only the first step in a regulatory process that will take time. We're going to have to see what USDA proposes, said Pratt-Hefner. Then she said the public will comment on those regulations, and then final rules will be drafted and issued. The USDA then gives schools and school food companies time to update recipes and implement the new nutrition standards. Lindsey Vonn is set to ski the Olympic downhill race with a torn ACL. How? United States, Lindsey Vonn speeds down the course during an alpine ski. Women's downhill official training at the 2026 Winter Olympics in Cortina d'Ampezzo, Italy, Friday, February 6, 2026. Cortina d'Ampezzo, Italy, here in the Dolomites with the 2026 Winter Olympics finally underway. There is one sentence heard in recent days more than any other. If anyone can do it, Lindsey can. That Lindsey is, of course, Lindsey Vonn, the 41-year-old skiing superstar whose genuinely epic comeback from retirement to compete at these Olympic Games was suddenly thrown into jeopardy just over a week ago when she crashed during a race and tore her left anterior cruciate ligament, or ACL. Most athletes would bow out after such a serious injury. Instead, Vonn stunned the skiing world by announcing this week that she would compete anyway. By Saturday, Vonn had successfully completed 2 official training runs on the course at the Tofane Ski Center, where the women's alpine events are being held, setting the stage for Sunday's race. She knows she'll have to push harder tomorrow, said her coach Askell Lund Svindal after Saturday's training run. You're not going to get away with the medal unless you push hard. and I think she's ready for that. How can a skier ski on a torn ACL? The ACL, or the anterior cruciate ligament, connects the femur to the tibia and helps to stabilize the knee as it pivots, meaning it is key to stabilize the knee as it pivots. In sports like soccer, hockey, and football, said Dr. Timothy Lin, an orthopedic surgeon and sports medicine at Dartmouth Health, who has worked with the U.S. ski team. In other sports like football, an ACL tear can end an athlete's season. In the NFL, you're constantly cutting and pivoting, Lin said. Although you can tear your ACL skiing pretty easily, skiing is not necessarily a cutting and pivoting activity in and of itself. That's especially true of downhill, the straightest and fastest of the alpine disciplines. Skiers must turn and jump, but spend much of the race skiing in line in a tucked position. Because of that, skiing is a downhill race, as Vaughn plans to do Sunday. Could be less risky than if she was competing in moguls of slopestyle. In skiing, it's the unexpected crash, he says, that can twist the knee and cause the ACL tear. But for Vaughn, whose specialty is downhill racing, the fastest, straightest form of ski racing, he says, it's less risky than in other disciplines. She's going to go side to side, but she's not planting her foot and pivoting on it, hopefully, he said. You can engage your quads and hamstrings to stabilize the knee in a predictable way. It feels stable. I feel strong. My knee is not swollen, and with the help of a knee brace, I am confident that I can compete on Sunday in the downhill race, Vaughn told reporters earlier this week. An injury with precedent in skiing. As a result, it's not unheard of for a skier to race after tearing their ACL. In 2022, Team USA skier Breezy Johnson tore hers in January before the Winter Olympics in Beijing, but decided to keep competing. I felt like it was totally possible. I knew that it was risky, she told reporters. In October, the risk is that the next crash could cause even more severe damage to the knee, which happened to Johnson a few weeks later, forcing her to pull out of the games. There are, I think, more athletes that ski without ACLs and with knee damage than talk about it, Johnson said this week. People are often unwilling to talk about it because of judgment from the media and the outside. Key to preserving, said fellow Team USA skier Bella Wright, is Vaughn's psychological strength. We all know how strong of a skier she is, but I think that her mental game is what makes Lindsay Lindsay, said Wright, who tore her ACL in 2016. That is what it takes to get through injuries, to get through the trauma, to get through the crashes. Vaughn's successful training runs on Friday and Saturday. Before the ACL tear, Vaughn was a season leader in the FIS downhill standings and had a genuine chance at an Olympic gold medal, which would be the second gold and fourth overall Olympic medal of her storied career. She acknowledges the chances are no longer as good, but she's determined to compete in the Olympics, and in doing so, complete a comeback story that would be monumental for any athlete in any sport. "I'm gonna do it. End of story," she said earlier this week. "I'm not crying. My head is high. I'm standing tall. I'm going to do my best. And whatever the result is, that's what it is. But I can never say I didn't try." On Friday, Vaughn successfully completed her first official training run with a time of 1:40.33. It wasn't perfect. She favored her right ski at times, and she took one turn too wide and had to course correct to pull herself back between the blue lines. Still, out of more than 40 skiers, she finished with the 11th fastest time of the day. Then Saturday, she skied it faster, crossing the finish line at 1:38.28. Svindal felt she showed clear improvement from Friday to Saturday, he said. Afterward, important because Saturday's conditions were more race-like. The course of Tofane features a handful of jumps that require a hard, flat landing. He said, an asymmetrical landing with equal weight on both feet is important to ski the course safely and quickly. He was nervous then and will be nervous again tomorrow, he said. But in a different way, yesterday was about, let's please let this be okay, he said. Tomorrow is like, let's go and be fast. New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani recently faced similar questions and concerns about transparency and preserving government records after his administration began to delete posts made by his predecessor, Eric Adams, under the NYC mayor handle on X. However, Adams' post can be found in a public archive maintained by the city. As the State Department archives old posts, other agencies post extreme content. In isolation, the removal of State Department social media content is a minor change, unrelated to larger overhauls of American diplomacy and foreign policy, and the administration's widespread changes to the federal bureaucracy. But Trump's second term messaging strategy has been defined by a mindset that social media content is governing, and that governing is also achieved through content creation. The Department of Homeland Security, the Labor Department, and other federal government accounts have shared posts that contain white supremacist rhetoric and nods to conspiracy theories like QAnon. And Trump administration staffers frequently use X to spar with critics and post memes that support the president. On Friday, Trump faced uncharacteristic pushback, sharing a video on his social media after that contained false claims of election fraud and a short snippet of an unrelated video that contained a racist depiction of a former President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama as apes. The post was deleted after the White House initially defended it as an internet meme. How to turn your breakup into a new beginning. Amy Chan remembers the breakup vividly. When she found out her partner was cheating on her, she immediately fell to the floor. After the split, she spiraled. She lost more than just her partner. She lost the future she'd planned out, the house, the kids, the fairy tale. Happily ever after stuff. I put so much of my identity in him and us and our future plan that without that I didn't know who I was, says Chan. Things got rough. The breakup led to years of depression and anxiety. Friends had to come by to make sure she was eating enough. She's doing much better now. She got over her split and used the lessons she learned to start Renew Breakup Boot Camp, a retreat for the brokenhearted to go and learn from the relationship experts. She has written a book, Breakup Boot Camp, The Science of Rewiring Your Heart. She's one of a few experts whom we use to talk about how to recover, heal, and move on from a breakup. Now, breakups come in all shapes and sizes. Slow dissolves, out of nowhere endings, and maybe you initiated the breakup. But they all have a few things in common. Mainly, they can all hurt. And recognizing that is the first step in getting better. Breakups hurt. Give them the respect they deserve. When we're with our loved ones and we are happy and warm, our brains light up in the basic reward-related regions. The same kind of regions that activate when you eat a piece of chocolate or win an amount of money, says Naomi Eisenberger, psychology professor specializing in social neuroscience at UCLA. On the flip side, when we feel rejected, the regions of the brain that process physical pain activate. She says, there's something truly painful about social rejection. And pain from a breakup hits us at a place that's at the core of our being. That's according to Orna Gordonick, a clinical psychologist, a psychoanalyst, and the center of the Showtime documentary series, Couples Therapy. I recommend people that a breakup is, first of all, worthy of their self-care. Of paying attention to their feelings and not expecting themselves to get over a breakup as if it's nothing. She says, Chan likens it to a mourning process, as she was still hurt from her breakup. She says her well-meaning friends would run out of patience and eventually tell her to buck up and get over it. Not super helpful. It is perfectly okay for you to feel a range of emotions. And because you feel those emotions, it doesn't mean something is wrong with you. She says, like any mourning process, it'll take some time and work. Resist the urge to use booze or drugs as crutch. When you're inebriated, the part of your brain that is rational, logical, and forward-thinking, all the tools you'll need to get over a breakup, starts to turn off. And we know all this, and yet, Chan says that substances can amplify our feelings of sadness and anger in a way that leads people to make decisions they regret. Basically, they'll rid you of the clarity you'll need for this next takeaway. Face reality and actually be broken up. This is harder than it sounds. After a breakup, Chan says your body is in a state of shock. So even if you know a relationship is over, your body will still be in a constant search of those love hormones you'd normally get from your ex. And this is a wound you pick at when you take a stroll down memory lane, looking at old texts, or stalking your ex on social media. In fact, unless you share something, a pet, child, etc., she says there's no real good reason to contact your ex. Yes, even if you're looking for closure, this is something Chan's clients often said they're in need of. But she says they're looking for the wrong thing. It's not actually closure. It's a relief from the pain that they're looking for, she says. And there's nothing an ex can do or say that'll offer relief because the thing that's causing the pain isn't the ex, it's the separation. If you're still blaming your ex, analyzing your ex, hoping for your ex to change, you're still in a relationship with your ex, she says. Our experts suggest avoiding the common pitfalls of villainizing your ex or putting your ex on a pedestal. Neither is really rooted in reality, and both keep you focusing on yourself and moving forward. Use the breakup as an opportunity for self-reflection. The moments after a breakup can be in some ways an exciting time to learn more about yourself. One of the exercises Chan uses on her clients is having them write down their breakup story as if they were telling it to a friend. Then she looks over the stories and teaches clients to spot what she calls thinking traps, generalizing, black and white thinking, being caught up in shoulds. Once those are recognized, she has her clients rewrite their story with just the facts. This helped them get more of an honest understanding of the relationship. And sometimes it's helpful to dig even further, examining past relationships and not just romantic ones. While we dig deeper, we realize that sometimes it's not specifically this last ex, but it was the sense of abandonment that they have felt over and over again in their life, says Chan. As you're looking back and re-examining, Grolnick says it says to be careful to differentiate between thoughts that you can learn from and thoughts that are rooted in shame. If you're looking back and finding actions you can change, I was too controlling or I was too self-absorbed, that can be helpful. But once you start defining yourself by these actions, I'm a loser, I'm unlovable, etc., then you're in shame-based territory. Recognize when you're stuck. Everyone gets over each breakup at their own pace. Grolnick finds an attempt to prescribe how long processing a breakup should take somewhat arbitrary. People differ in how much they attach, and they differ in how they mourn their attachments, she says. She has worked with people in her practice who take years to get over a breakup, to come out on the other side having gone through a very honest, deep process of mourning. Others get through it a little quicker. Chan spent 2 years after her breakup villainizing and pathologizing until a friend finally asked her if that story was serving her in any way. It was the question she needed in order to finally think about the relationship, honestly, remembering the good and the bad, and began to process of moving on. But how do you know if you're just taking your time to process or if you're stuck? Grolnick says to be alert for repetition. If you're having the same series of thoughts, the same emotional experience, week after week, and nothing is developing, nothing is changing, then something is off, she says. If you're caught in a cycle, know that it's natural. Chan says that tends to happen if we feel primary emotion, say sadness, and then feel shame about that emotion because we don't think we should be feeling that way. Then we start feeding that emotion with our thoughts and ruminations. Sometimes we don't do ourselves any favors and really lean into it. During the bad times, she'd play Coldplay's Fix You on repeat while in a fetal position. In those cases, you want to try to do the opposite. Stand tall with your shoulders back. Put something less wallowy on the playlist. Sometimes literally just shaking your body will help you reset your mind away from unhelpful ruminations. You reset your mind away from unhelpful ruminations. Eisenberger says that getting some exercise and spending time with loved ones help our bodies naturally produce pain-easing opioids. You can also use the energy you'd otherwise spend on ruminating on your ex and instead focus on your new hobby or reinvest in a passion you've been meaning to spend more time on. Essentially, fill up your life and eventually you'll be ready to start dating if you feel ready. There's no hard and fast marker to tell if you're ready to go out on a date. Our experts agree, though, to make sure you're dating because you feel like you are genuinely interested in meeting new people, and not as a way of distracting yourself from your breakup. The only way to tell is to actually do it, says Chan. And if you go and you're absolutely destroyed and it takes you back to what you think is square one, then okay, that's fine. Take the time to rest and try again later. And if you go and experience goes a little better, then keep trying. This doesn't mean you're still not nursing some wounds from the breakup. You might still even miss your ex, but the moments might be right when you stop being completely consumed and preoccupied with trying to understand what happened, says Girl Nick. Either way, know what you do have the tools to recover from heartbreak.